What's up, my dudes? My name is Sister Turley, and in this video I'm just going to be talking about different dimensions and kind of opening up the conscious mind. So it's definitely a little bit more of an out there kind of video, so I understand if some of you don't want to watch this video at all, but for the people that want to really understand what I'm trying to say, let me just warn you, because I'm probably going to blow your mind, okay? The things I'm going to say, it may not make any sense to you at first, but you might have to watch this video back 2 or 3 times to even somewhat understand it. But it's so crazy and out there that I can't, even if I told it to you perfectly, there's still a certain level that you got to understand on your own to even really understand it. So it's so crazy, man. It's one of those things that I just recently kind of thought about, and I feel like most humans never even think about this their entire lifetime because we're so stuck in our everyday dimension and we just get used to everything else around us. We don't open up our minds and think of anything greater. So it's pretty crazy what I'm about to tell you. I mean, this is next level. You almost have to think higher than your own brain and consciousness to really understand it. So I know that all sounds crazy, but just sit down, okay? Open up your mind, prepare yourself, because this is going to be crazy, okay? Just really think about the words I'm saying. Try to let them sink in so that you can understand it somewhat. But like I said, even if I explain it to you perfectly 100 times, there's still a certain level of it that you got to understand on your own. You've got to, I don't know even how to explain it, but you got to kind of understand it on your own for it to even make any sense. So, but the things I'm telling you can kind of get your mind working in that direction to where you might be able to understand it. Some people may never understand it. So let me just start off with something more simple and then kind of work my way up so that it all makes sense somewhat in the long run, okay? So we know of things in our life like an apple, objects like an apple, a cup, and then creatures like a shark, a alligator, a bird, a lion, something like that, a tiger. We know all the objects, okay? So a level above that is kind of your elements, okay? You have electricity, you have things like fire, water, which is not necessarily an object, but it's something close to that, okay? So then you have a level above that, which is your emotions, your senses, sight, touch, all hearing, all that good stuff. Then your kind of feelings and emotions and stuff. And then you have another level above that, which is things that you can imagine in your mind but couldn't exist on this world or in this dimension. So for instance, I can imagine a shark mixed with a snake. Like, all you guys can probably imagine that in your mind, what that would look like, but that can never really exist in this dimension or world that we're in, okay? So that's kind of the next level. But what I want you to really think about is something that you can't even imagine, okay? Something that, this is the hardest part to understand, okay? It's not an object, it's not an element, it's not a feeling, a sense, it's not something that you can even imagine in your conscious mind, but something different than that, something totally different. It's not a color, it's not even like a three-dimensional object at all. It's something totally different. You see what I'm saying? It's something totally other than that, something like a complete diagonal angle from everything you've ever thought existed in this dimension that you're in, okay? If that even makes any sense at all. It's so hard to understand, but for instance, I can imagine a dragon mixed with a sphinx that flies and something crazy like that would never exist in this world, but I can imagine it. You see what I'm saying? But I'm talking about another level above that, something your brain cannot even, you can't even comprehend it because it's bigger than the brain and consciousness itself, okay? So I want you guys to really just try to think about that the best you can. I know it's so hard to understand it, and it's such a high level of thinking that you've got to understand that your own brain is not even going to be able to comprehend it because it's that crazy. It's that you can't even imagine it because it's not even imaginary. It's not even like, you don't even sit around and think about you could imagine it, or it's a crazy color you've never seen, or a crazy object, or a crazy something. It's something totally different than all of those things, okay? So, like for instance, we can see colors like red, blue, green, and there's even creatures on this earth that can see colors that we can't even see. Like there's some creatures that can see, they've got a whole different color palette that we can't even imagine. So to them, we're like a blind person. We can't even imagine those colors. You see what I'm saying? Those certain colors that certain animals can see that we can't. It's not like mixing purple and blue and you get a really cool color. It's like a color you can't even imagine. It's kind of like a blind person to us. They don't even know what a color is. They can't even see a color. So for instance, our entire universe, we're blind to other dimensions in that same sense. Like our own universe, we're blind to anything more because this is all we know. Just how a blind person is to anything that we see in our world, you know? So for instance, like someone else in another dimension looks at us and thinks, oh, that person is blind compared to what could be out there, just how we look at a blind person in our world. So it's not even a color. It's more than that. It's not like some different color we can't see. That was just a little analogy I was using. It's something, it's not even a color. It's not even anything we can think of. It's more than that. It's crazy. And I know all of this is just probably mind-blowing, you guys, and just probably more than 90% of you still don't even understand what the heck I'm talking about, because it's, like I'm saying, it's one of those things you might have to watch this video 2 or 3 times for it to ever even somewhat sink in. And like I said, it may never sink into you. You got to think of more than your own mind can even comprehend. You know, you can't even think about it because it's so crazy. You couldn't even imagine it. For instance, like we can imagine what heaven or hell might be, okay? We can imagine heaven's like clouds and you might feel good and, you know, God's there and stuff like that. And you can also imagine hell like fire and it's horrible and pain and things like that. But I'm thinking of something that's a complete diagonal angle that you can't even imagine what it is. You know what I'm saying? Like we get so stuck in just seeing what's around us, and that's all we base everything off of. But I'm trying to open up my mind so much that I know for a fact my own conscious mind can't even think of it because it's above my conscious mind. You see, it's kind of like, and you could even go as far as saying a dimension is just a word in our language. You see what I'm saying? You could have something that's more than a different dimension in a sense. So it gets crazy when it gets to that level, but you know, you could imagine just a crazy world with aliens and crazy Apple robots that are crazy flying, or crazy alien creatures that make no sense and have crazy colors that we can't imagine or something like that. But I'm talking about something that's more than that, okay? Something that it's not like in our stratosphere. It's not a galaxy. It couldn't exist in our universe. It's more than a universe. It's more than a... It's more than a dimension. I mean, you could somewhat say it's a dimension, but like I'm saying, dimension is just a language. I mean, it's not even a language. It's something totally different from that. So just let that sink in a little bit. I know it's crazy, and you really got to sit down and just try to make your brain comprehend it. Like I'm saying, I can't even really tell you what it is because it's more than what a human can even say. It's more than what you can even think of. You know what I'm saying? It's more than what you can even comprehend altogether. So you really never fully understand it, but you can understand that it's possible. You know, it's just about opening up your brain so much that you understand that it's nothing to do with this world whatsoever. You can't even imagine it. It's nothing to do with this dimension. Not, you know, our world Earth that we live on is pretty limited. I mean, you know, there couldn't exist a shark snake or a tiger bird or something, you know, a mixture between the two or something crazy like that, or an orange fruit that is actually a robot that has a gun on it, but it flies, but it's constantly changing colors. And you know, you can imagine that kind of stuff. I'm talking about stuff that the own human consciousness cannot even imagine. And it starts getting crazy when you think of, and this is something that's kind of more simple, but once you think of it, it's pretty insane. You know, we get so attached to, we're attached to our body and things like that, but we're really just our consciousness, okay? So our consciousness could exist anywhere. It's not attached to your body at all. Once you realize that you're just in this body, that your body's really not you. You are your consciousness. And it gets crazy like that because you think, well, without my brain, I would be nothing. But how does my consciousness work without my brain? And where did I exist before I was born? And, you know, it starts to get crazy when you really think about it. But yeah, man, I hope this somewhat makes sense. It will make sense to some of you guys, but some of you guys may think you understand it, but you really don't. So I recommend just really thinking it through, really watching this video multiple times so that it can somewhat sink in. But I'm telling you, it took... I mean, I'm almost 20 years old, and I've never thought about this before. I mean, I've thought about crazy things like aliens and spaceships, and even before, I've thought about colors that I couldn't even imagine. You know, like a blind person can't see our colors. So, for instance, we're blind to certain colors, but what you got to think about is we're blind in everything into another dimension, because we're so used to our dimension that we could be completely blind and can't even imagine another dimension. We can't even start to think about what's there, or what. It's not even a there matter. You can't even say there, because there is just a language word that we use and to say that something is in one place, but it's not even a place. It's it's endless boundaries of unimaginable things, and it's not even a thing. I mean, things, like I'm saying, thing is just part of our language. It's it takes such a higher thinking to even comprehend it. But hope this video made sense to some of you guys. It's something really cool to think about, whether or not you believe in God or don't or whatever. I'm not necessarily even saying that this is like an afterlife thing. I'm just saying this is, it's just cool to think about this, like that there could exist this crazy unimaginable dimension, because just how a blind person is. I mean, you got to think about that. We could be blind to what's above us. You see what I'm saying? To what made this entire workings that we exist in. You see, we could be totally blind to that. So when you think about it, there is no limit. There's no unimaginable. Well, it's all unimaginable, but it's it's like just saying you imagine something is like totally such a low level, because it's not even about imagining it, because imagining doesn't even exist. It's something else. It's something totally different that we can't even think of. It's not even about imagining or thinking or emotions or objects or language or things we can feel and see and sight and hearing. It's something totally different from all of those things. So, yeah, just sit on that and think about that for a while. It's pretty crazy, guys. It's definitely... I can't believe I even talked about this, but I wanted to, because it's a cool way to open your mind and open your consciousness, and it's just a really cool thing. So, like I say, may not make sense to most of you guys, but for the people that it does make sense to, shout out to you, dude. It's pretty sick when you can really understand it. But like I'm saying, a lot of people, they think they understand it, but they really don't understand it to the highest level. So, there's kind of levels to understanding it there. But like I'm saying, I could tell you everything about it that I can possibly convey to you, and you still would not understand it unless you really tried to understand it. You have to understand it in your own conscious mind for it to make sense. I can push you that way to understanding it, but I can still never really tell you what it is. It's impossible. So anyways, I appreciate all you watching these videos, and I'll keep on making them.